My name is Dale. I'm one of the pastors here at Redeemer Bible Church, and this is our next episode of Redeeming Truth. And I'm sitting here, as you can see, with Pastor John, who is our lead pastor here. And we wanted to sit down to talk about the last 5 years here at Redeemer Bible Church, especially for those of you who are newer to our church that might not know some of our history. So, John, having said that, can you take us back to how you first got here to Redeemer?
Yeah, so I was a high school Bible teacher at Gilbert Christian High School, and but really always believing for a long time that the Lord had called me to ministry. I actually talked about that in one of our previous podcasts, actually our first podcast. So you can go check that out in previous episodes, but really believing that that was going to be the trajectory of my life, going to seminary and all of that. And so when I got the opportunity to come here, it actually came through me not even trying. I was in ministry at another church in the area, just helping out. And the elders here reached out to that church and reached out to the pastor there and asked him, hey, do you know anybody that could be our interim pastor? We just lost our pastor, and we would love to find somebody to help us through that transition. And that pastor gave them my name, and so then I met with the elders here, and they liked me, so they brought me before the church. The church voted, and I became the interim pastor in August of 2014. The church started declining. Well, really, the church was already declining before I got here. I didn't stop that. I actually kind of sped that up a little bit, so that by March of 15, we had gone from 200 people and 3 services to main services basically at 8 and 11 and a Sunday school hour down to 1 service. And in March of 15, the church thought I had done such a good job that they asked me to be the lead pastor. And so that started in March of 15. We, at that point, decided we were going to relaunch as a new church, but instead of closing for a few months or 6 months, teaching through the book of Acts, maybe in some small groups, we decided let's just change the name, and one weekend have a funeral for the old church, and the next weekend relaunch as a new one. So that's what we did on May 17th, 2015. We relaunched as Redeemer Bible Church. We put signs out in the front that said under new management, new service times, new everything. And God has really done some incredible work since then.
Yeah, I remember those days. And I remember a lot of people consulting you, saying, John, you probably should let some time go by between having a funeral for the older church and then starting a new church. Talk a little bit about the reasoning that you and the elders at that time had for not doing that, because it really does go against a lot of the counsel that you were receiving.
Yeah, so there were a couple things that really made us say we're not going to do that. The first one was we were already losing a lot of people, so there was already what you would call bad DNA. There was already that leaving. And the people that were staying were hungry, and they were excited, and they were dreaming about the future. So it really didn't seem like I needed to do that. The second thing was, if we did that, there were 2 full-time people here, 1 part-time person who would lose their jobs. And while, leaders will say, in order to make an omelet, you got to break a few eggs. That's just the cost of doing business. Then actually, they probably helped with the downfall of the church, and so it's probably kind of good to get them out of there. I decided to do the exact opposite. I brought them in, both of them, and I said, hey, neither of you are going to lose your job. We're all going to suffer financially if we have to, before any of you suffers by losing your job. So just calm down. Just know that's what we're going to do moving forward. And that not only caused them to be settled in their own heart, but it caused the rest of the church who knew them and who loves them to say, like, okay, this is a shepherd that we can follow because he cares. And that, I think those decisions in those early days really we've just followed that trajectory even to this day.
Yeah, so you know the timelines better than I do, but there was a time when it got down to 90 people. And this last weekend, in the last 2 weekends, we were well over 1,000. Actually, one weekend crossing 1,200 in our church. And so that's big growth in a very short amount of time for the life of a church. So can you talk to our members and our attenders at Redeemer about what that transition's been like for you personally? Maybe some of the things that you're excited about through that transition, but also some of the things as a pastor, as a shepherd, that are concerning, for lack of a better word, about that kind of growth.
Yeah. So like I was saying before, when we had 200 people when I first got here, we basically had 3 services, 2 services and a Sunday school hour. And by March of 15, we'd gone from just under 200 to 93 people. So we'd lost over 100 people, and and we've went from 3 services to 1 service. So I know what that feels like. And so now we've gone from 1 service in March of 15. Now we're at 4 services. We already need probably to go to 5 services as soon as possible, because we just continue to grow. And if you would have asked me in spring of 15, hey, do you think this church is going to be over 1,000 people in 4 years? I would have laughed at you. There's no way in the world I would have thought that. I would have given you a dozen reasons why that wasn't going to happen. But obviously, this is not in our control. This is the Lord's work, and we're kind of responding to his leadership. That's how we want to be. We want to stay behind the Lord and follow what he's doing. And so in that time, what happened just briefly was that from that moment, we shot up to 300 people in about 9 months. And then we stayed there for a year and a half. And the elders and I, it was great because we got to read books. We got to think through what kind of church do we want to be? How do we want to structure this whole thing? So that's when small groups came about. That's membership. That was dreaming about the future. All of that happened in those 17 months. And then in around June, July, August of 17, we started growing again, and we haven't stopped since then. So every year we've grown by about 300 people since then. And that's about 1 service a year. So it has been completely out of our control. Nobody's more surprised by that than I am. But at the same time now, it's like, okay, how do we keep up with what the Lord is doing? Because the ship is sailing, and we're trying to build it while it's going. That's kind of where we are now. We're grateful for what the Lord is doing, no doubt, but we're going, okay, Lord, we need leaders. We need people to lead small groups. We need people in every area of ministry. We need members who will get involved, who will give, who will serve, so that we can continue doing the work that the Lord has us doing here.
Yeah. Anytime an organization grows at the rate our organization has grown, there's an excitement level to it, but there's also a reality that there are people who experience real loss, right? You have this small community of believers who are kind of coming alongside of each other, circling the wagons, if you will, and just want to follow Christ. And as they do that, more people start showing up. More people start showing up, and there's a real sense of loss of a smallness that I know we've talked about in the past. And one of the challenges of being a part of a church like ours that's growing is keeping people connected, right? And part of the history of Redeemer, I think, has been that we've worked very hard to keep people connected, not only to each other, but to having a reasonable ability to have a touch from one of their pastors, or to have the ability to talk with one of the pastors here. Can you talk about that philosophy? Even though we've grown as a church, our desire to continue to shepherd, not only a desire, but our conviction that we are here to shepherd God's people. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. 2 things in there. The first one is I was happy. I was really happy when we got to 300 people. Mm-hmm. I was like, we didn't die. Praise the Lord. Like, right. Church didn't die. Right. Like, we made it out of the hard times. And then I thought, God, thank you for 300 people. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm happy to pastor a church of 300 people for the rest of my life, teaching them the Bible, getting to know all of them, shepherding them with the other elders, caring for them, I just thought, this is perfect. This is wonderful. I love this. And so I have a sense of loss as the church started to grow again, because I don't like not knowing people's names. I don't like that people expect me to know their name after meeting them once. And I've just met 27 people before that. Right. And I'm trying to juggle all those names. I want to know everyone's names. I want to know everyone's kids' names. And so when this has happened, I felt a real loss as the church has grown. So our conviction, the second part of your question, that our conviction is to shepherd every member, to know every member, and that there will be touches, multiple touches a year with every member from the pastoral team or a team of people that will be helping them do that. And so that's the goal. That's where we're headed. That's what we want. It is, God, every system that we've thought of keeps breaking because we keep growing. Right. And so that's still a conviction because Hebrews 13:17 says we're going to give an account for the souls of the people here. Mm-hmm. And so we take that as we're going to give an account for the souls of the members. So we need to know every soul. We need to care for, protect, guide, teach, feed every soul. And so that's where we want to be, and that's where we're headed. So that's what our growth groups are for, just to get around another group of people so that there are other people who are in our lives. But then at the same time, there is the pastors. We also want to be involved too. And we're trying to figure out the systems in order to make that happen.
Yeah, so I haven't talked to you about this beforehand, but and I know there's many situations that stand out in your mind and your heart. Some really exciting and good, some not so exciting and good situations. Mm-hmm. But is there one that you can share with our church about something that's happened in the last 5 years where it's like, man, that's why we do what we do?
Yeah, so there are a lot of those.
Sure.
But when I've done funerals here, for instance, I've done about a dozen funerals in the past 5 years, and those are always horrible. They're all, especially when you're doing funerals for somebody who you weren't expecting that they were going to die. Mm. And when you're we're coming up on a pretty awful anniversary, actually in a few days, and when the grieving family gets a text message or an email or a card from me 1 year later or 5 years later, and they're like, "Gosh, you remembered. We love that you remembered. We can't believe that you remember this 5 years and you still remember." It's those kinds of things that help people feel like, okay, I have pastors who care about me, and that I'm not just a number here. I'm not just a giving unit. I'm not just a number on a spreadsheet, but I'm an actual person. And that's, I think, after Bible teaching, I think shepherding and getting to know and really care for our people, that's really our goal here. That's our heart. And the problem is we've just grown so fast. And it's a great problem to have, but it's still a problem. So that will always be the trajectory that we're moving towards, and just trying to figure out how best to do that.
Yeah. So maybe in closing, what's your heart for those people who have joined us in the last year, in the last 2 years, who weren't really a part of that initial community and who haven't been here the entire time to experience the growth? What do you want to say to them as far as how they're going to be? Maybe 5 years from now, we're sitting back on the couch again talking about the last 5 years, and how they can be a part of that here at Redeemer.
Yeah, so it is interesting to come to church here as a visitor, because you arrive, you see 4 services, you hear over 1,000 people, and you think, okay, then they've got to have this Cheesecake Factory menu of programs and services and all of these things, right? That are going to be there to serve you and your family. And we are just getting started, so we're not even 5 years old yet. So imagine your 4-year-old. They don't have anything figured out. We have some things figured out, but we're still becoming the church that God wants us to be. So for somebody who just shows up, I would say that the same thing I would say to them is what I said to the people when we were seeking to turn the church around, was that church does not exist for us. This is not about us. This is about Christ and seeing his name honored in our area. and it is about loving and caring and serving other people. So instead of coming to the church and going, what's in it for me? It's ask not what what the Redeemer can do for you, but ask, how could I be a blessing to the people here at Redeemer Bible Church? That if we have people with that kind of heart attitude, then everything that's going on here, all the things that people love about this church, will just continue and even get better as that heart attitude permeates the life of everybody at our church.
That's great. So at Redeemer, we exist so people can know, love, and serve Jesus. We are here to serve him. And that's perfectly said. What we want for our people is for them to experience what it is to die to themselves in order to serve their Lord. And how Jesus has set that up is by serving one another, serving our community. So we're thankful for the last 4 years. Not a day goes by that I'm not thankful for what God has done here. And I look forward to what God's going to do in the future, never presuming upon his grace. We want to stay behind him and follow him. But it certainly is exciting to be here at Redeemer. So thanks, Pastor John.
Thanks, Dale.
Thanks for watching.